In Saturday's video, we were discussing how this is most likely going into complete collapse, but as those are bigger timeframes we are discussing, it can take a lot of time for that to actually come to fruition, and that's why we pay attention to the shorter timeframes. Even though we're looking for how that weakness would shape up, well, having something like weekly expected moves can help us in knowing if that's going to shape up this week. So let's pay attention to that, because I don't believe that we have enough people fearful in this market or greedy in this market to see a move at this moment. We see that we are in the neutral area, and in order for us to see what you would like to see as a big downturn, you would most likely need to see some extreme greed. We don't necessarily have that at this moment, but something like this might create that scenario. So we're going to look into the shorter time frames, get you guys the weekly and daily expected moves, and get into a bunch of technical analysis across the board, and let's get into it. As I wipe these out, I just want you to know that it is important to keep in mind that the bigger time frames, the monthly is way up there, going to the highest point the MACD has ever gotten. So is it a good time to invest? Well, a lot of the time we just want to say buy low, sell high, and you're at the highest point for the MACD, so take that into consideration when you have to make a decision. But something that can really help us out with this is the shorter time frames. We can keep this going higher by moving in these shorter time frames. You notice we're very, very tight here. So paying attention to something like a 30-minute will be important. And do we have weakness as of right now? Well, technically, yes, we do. We actually do have that weakness as of right now. And something surprising on Monday is possible, but it could be in either direction. You notice that we do have the weakness on this 30-minute RSI. We have the weakness all across this 30-minute MACD. This is when you want to pay attention to downside, but this is exactly where they can trick you. If this 30-minute does cross up, we have a very tight range for tomorrow, and we just might see this continue all the way up to the top of our channel, all the way to a weekly expected move, or even a monthly expected move for December, even though we have a bunch of stocks, individual stocks outside of their monthly move. So let's pay attention to these levels. All right, so for this week, 614.57 to the upside, you have 601.05 to the downside. Not a big range, right? Not a lot of implied volatility. And on Monday, you have very little implied volatility, which 68% of the time you land in here. So 609.87 for Monday, and we do have 605.75 for Monday to the downside. So that should tell us that most of the time we would see this kind of just doodle around, maybe touch one of these ranges, be able to buy back up, right? We're going to stay in this range. We've noticed over the past few, I would say, months, that when the ranges for a daily expected move get this tight, we are more likely actually to see something crazy. And it makes sense because it's closer together. So if we get any kind of news people aren't expecting before or during Monday, you can see something crazy. And so we want to pay attention to that as we are seeing weakness that likes to roll down 2-hour charts. So we see that the 2-hour, the 30-minute crossing back up would be the bullish thing to get to that topside daily expected move. Maybe we continue the trend for some time. It can take a long time for this market to turn around on those weekly and monthly charts. But we do notice that the 2 hours pretty cooked here. And if it wanted to, hey, it's still saying pullback. So the most likely thing going into Monday is the SPY is at least going to pull down to a daily expected move or see something crazy to the downside. When that shift does happen, if you are going to see the upside move or see something crazy to the upside, all you want to do is pay attention to the bullish case, and that would be if the 30-minute can cross up into positive territory, you will continue this overall very, very bullish trend and maybe make people a little bit more greedy. And in case you missed that Saturday video, first of all, it's good to go look at it because we just talk about some base things, in my opinion, but you'll notice that we're violating the divergences. That was the main thing that you need to take away from Saturday's video. We do not have the weakness and momentum that you normally see at these tops in the SPY and the Qs. We have violated those levels, which means any kind of turn down could leave one more trap for the upside. And we just talked about people needing to get more greedy. So if you see a fall here and then that's able to turn back up, that is something that can get people to say, oh, look, we're going to crash. Nope, we're saved again. Upside, maybe something with FOMC, maybe something with CPI. But this is where I'll be paying attention for the daily scale if we're going to get those momentum signals. Pay attention and look at that video if you're interested. Now, I just wanted to show you the 30-minute for the Qs because this is very, very obvious divergence, but you are still squeezing. You are not below the 9 even on the 30-minute. Even though you see this confirmed on your MACD, you see it there for your RSI, it is it's saying the 2-hour needs to pull back. Well, for a 2-hour pullback, we might want to pay attention to some weekly and daily expected moves. To the upside, we do have 534.68 to the upside, and we have 518.28 to the downside. Then we have, for the daily expected moves, 529.03 to the upside and 523.93 to the downside. It's kind of a tongue twister. But we notice that these ranges are very, very small. So we should expect, again, that small price action, a little bit less of the bigger swings. But we have noticed towards the end of this 2024, when these ranges get really tight, you are potentially seeing crazier things, actually. So just be ready for that. It means react. If this 30 minutes able to turn back up, you might head straight for that monthly expected move, even though these signals are saying the most probable thing is to curl down and test that daily before you swing up, or even see a 2-hour pullback to the weekly expected move. Now, I think this would be a great level to test. Maybe you even break that and go fill a gap. Then you're able to turn up into positive territory. And the best thing about this kind of look is if it was able to roll down a daily chart, you would actually get a nice 2-hour divergence at the actual high. And that would be the look I'm paying attention to for the week. Something outside of this monthly expected move. I think as we're so close to it, you're going to gravitate towards it. If you can reload and grab those buyers, maybe fake people out early on in the week. But just a note. Okay, the 30 minute says the most probable thing is this 2-hour is going to curl down, but is it curled down yet? No. So be open to the market making some kind of move higher. This is a very bullish run. We called this like to a T right here. You can go back and look. I can even pull up the thumbnail where only this price action was showing. And I was stating how everyone was saying stock market crash. I had stock market crash in quotes. And I said, no, you're just looking for this. Just like the last time, you're looking for this right over here. And that ended up happening. We see this big run. Now we're paying attention for weakness. We have not fully formed that weakness on a 2-hour or daily chart for the SPY and the Qs just yet. Apple making a massive upward run, going to the top of the Bollinger a few times here, and maybe it needs to revert back to that 20 before it sees the next upside move. If you notice here for Apple, we haven't had those divergences fully play out. We saw the weakness multiple times from some levels up here keep getting tagged. We're able to break through, and that's important to understand because now we don't have those, and it's too extended for me to say, like, yeah, there's divergence on the daily scale. So I think the more likely thing is we're going to see one more upward move here. If you need weekly expected moves, especially if we pull back, one more upward move. But if you need weekly expected moves, guys, for any of these stocks, that's what Patreon's for. And we do talk about those weekly expected moves in a video strictly for Patreon throughout the week. So what I want to pay attention to is, does the 2-hour have weakness here that tells me that the daily can roll over? And the real answer is not necessarily yet. Right? So there could be a lot of time in this move for Apple. You could go down. You could see how the 2-hour wants to be pulling back. We could keep pulling back with time, see some kind of upward move. Maybe we tag a weekly expected move. Then you see the 2-hour divergence that can pull down that daily chart. So something I'd be paying attention to is the 2-hour is saying pullback. Is that going to pull back with time, or is that going to actually pull down to lower levels? It would be very interesting if the 2-hour and the daily were able to cross for some time, and then you actually see them both at the same time. That's something I will be watching out for. And if we look into a 30-minute chart, do we have weakness in the chart? The real answer is yes, but you're refusing to lose. You're refusing to make that first low to really go make that higher or lower high and then keep making those series of lower lows. That's what you're missing in this overall thing. And if you keep moving sideways and you see this thing curl up on the 30-minute in positive territory, what's the most likely thing to happen? Well, we might see one more upward move. And that's where it's good to have weekly expected moves and things like that to know how high the options market is pricing in things like Apple to go. So do I see weakness in Apple that's really scaring me for the stock? No, I do not. I think that it can actually see more upside if it can really either move sideways or even move down on the 2-hour before that next 2-hour move higher. Tesla is booming, and talking about positive gamma. Tesla is one that you really want to be paying attention to, and pretty much every stock, those little 30-minute curl-ups. We keep seeing those curl-ups, and we know that we're in a neutral standpoint right now, so we're going to be paying attention to if this 2-hour can confirm down. That will be a big deal. So the 2-hour confirming back down would be a negative sign, but we notice that that is just starting another big bullish run, so we could just keep curling up into positive territory, moving sideways, curling up into positive territory. That can keep taking place with something like Tesla. These things are very, very hard to short. So why don't I just sit back, relax, wait for maybe a daily pullback or something like that before I actually head higher? The only problem I really see with Tesla making this higher move, if it stops abruptly and you don't see weakness and momentum in the shorter time frames, is if the daily can cross down, you might get, with the weakness and momentum, a more meaningful daily pullback. Now, I'm just going to talk about daily pullbacks just because this is so positive that the likelihood of another curl up is still there for Tesla. But it means, hey, am I going to try to short this? No, this can just keep going. But if it does give me a chance to get bullish on the stock again, and I know this is a pretty damn positive trend, I can see that curl down. Maybe I'll get lucky and see a 2-hour divergence and end up seeing that thing curl back up into positive territory and be a part of the next move. That's how I really want to treat things in this market. I more so want to look for stocks that could potentially have one more bullish move instead of trying to short every single little 30-minute divergence at this point, because you are in a melt up, you are in a short squeeze right now, especially for Tesla. And that's where Amazon is another one. And if you just go into this 2-hour, you're going, is that really, really bearish? Or did we need to see something like this for that to get bearish? And you could make that this week. That's why it's good to have those weekly expected moves. We are going up to a higher, or about the same point as last time for this MACD. So if you can just pull down for a brief moment, maybe even fill this gap rather quickly, and then turn up into positive territory, you can actually form that weakness that can roll down a daily chart. Now, the daily chart is starting to get rid of some of those divergence points. So if this keeps going, then this would lead to, hey, the daily even might have another move higher. This can take a lot of time to play out, so you want to be aware of those things, and then just be aware of the bigger signals too. The weekly scale is still setting up a divergence point. Now, we have already come across that a little bit going up towards it on the MACD, but if this for some reason would turn around, this could be something to be worried about. But that is going to take weeks of selling to come in, and a lot can happen before then. That's why we're talking about these shorter time frames, being able to make that 2-hour move higher and paying attention when weakness actually shows its face in a lot of these stocks that are just booming to the upside, while many, 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 many other stocks are not even participating. Nvidia, we were looking for a lower high here. We didn't necessarily have the signals for a lower high. Everyone's starting to talk about what we were talking about when we saw this 30-minute divergence. Oh, watch for it to drop below 135, try to hold up there. And then we saw the 30-minute divergence down here. So Nvidia's been really nice to us and showing us signals for these big moves. And that's fantastic. But now everyone's talking about what we were talking about a week or so ago, which is, hey, a head and shoulders can form. And look at that. We're actually in the area where that shoulder can form. So we're paying attention. Notice that the 2-hour was curled down at the end of the day. This is not a full 2-hour bar, and it is on a green bar, but it is below the 9-day moving average. So it does lean us like, hey, the 2-hour is saying we need to pull back further here. It doesn't mean it has to be some kind of massive drop, because we were able to hold above 141.12. If you remember when we were saying, hey, this can go slightly above 141.12 and start to turn down if we see weakness, we didn't see weakness. And that's a big deal, because now this MACD was able to go so positive that even if this curls down for a little bit, you have to be open to this turning back around with some kind of higher low and seeing another good move from Nvidia. What would that set up for us if Nvidia did that? Well, on the daily scale, you might be curling up on this MACD, and you might have a daily run here that sets up some kind of trap in December. So watch out for Nvidia if we curl down on the 2-hour, because that could curl right back up, and then we could go make a daily reversal signal. Now, for the 30-minute, I just wanted to show this off real quick. If we're going to make a form of weakness, like for this to actually drop, well, we might make that early on in the week. If you see this 30-minute, we've had one big run. We had some divergence on the RSI, not on the MACD at the same time. So we want to pay attention to the fact that this 30-minute could just cross up early on in the week, and I think that would be your bullish case for Monday, and then you see some kind of move like this that breaks through resistance, and then you get to see that 30-minute divergence that tells you that a 2-hour pullback is coming. That is something that I would be very aware of. So right now it looks like if the 30-minute curls up early on in the week for Nvidia, you can see some upside. Better have a weekly expected move, because if we go up towards that and we see weakness, Ooh, that might look like we're actually going to get a more meaningful 2-hour pullback for Nvidia. Just a note here. Remember, guys, you're seeing the bearish signals, but we have a lot of things that can take place in the shorter time frames that can really make this thing go higher for longer than you think. AMD, perfect, because we were talking about, hey, 30-minute divergence here. Most likely what's going to happen, we're going to go retest the trend line here, and that looks like what's happening as of now. The 30-minute going pretty negative, so be open to a lower high, right? But if this 30-minute can curl up and go positive, you can see a strong move here. We are mainly leaning towards this just so the 2-hour can reload. And I think this is what you really wanted if you were a bull. And now you can just sit and be like, hey, is an hourly turning up? Is the 30-minute turning up? Is that going really positive? And then say, hey, if this 2-hour turns up, most likely this is going to be some kind of structure or even a slanted, if you really look at it this way, just kind of coming up with this on the fly actually, because I just see this slanted head and shoulders. And the good part about this slanted head and shoulders is I'm going to show it to you guys because it actually looks pretty good. If we connect these levels here, sorry, that's kind of a thick line. Let me make that a little bit thinner. There you go. Okay, so if this is going to connect, this actually would be a great head and shoulders, because if you hold this across, you're still within this flagging and you got the dip down to really create that bearishness while we were paying attention to divergence forming for the next big move. So this is important because now you're getting a retest of the bottom of that. And if you're able to break through, you actually can see a big move from AMD. So watch if that 2-hour is able to curl up into positive territory. We do have weekly expected moves for AMD coming out later today. Those will be coming out later today on Patreon. Probably going to put them up right after this video, so go look in the link in the description for Patreon to get those weekly expected moves. We do notice that Meta, kind of an interesting look, kind of like Tesla. It does give you a 2-hour divergence. You see the blip on the MACD and you did pull below the 9, so we can take it into consideration. This can curl down daily charts and you can get a 2-hour big pullback and a daily pullback, maybe even at the same time. But we talked about the daily scale yesterday and said, hey, if the daily turns down for Meta, it's a little different than Tesla. Meta, if the daily turns down, that's going to be a bigger problem, I think, than Tesla at this point. So watch if that daily actually rotates down. And the 2-hour is signaling that can happen, but notice it is super far away from the center line. So if that curls back up in a positive territory, you have to be open to positivity. Now, does the 30 minutes show us weakness for that 2-hour to turn down? The truth is it does. It really does. It shows big weakness here for the 30 minutes. So Meta is leaning towards a 2-hour pullback this week. I have some stuff to get to this morning, but I haven't made the weekly expected move for AMC yet, but that was very, very helpful, and it continues to be helpful for AMC and GME. We've seen multiple times now over the past, I would say, 3 months that we're just tagging these like once, almost every single week. So we're paying attention to it, and this is where we posted it to Patreon. We said that thing with GME, but we said watch out for when these things hit the weekly expected moves. This is where the battle really begins. And notice we get dilution right as we get there. Now, there are some things about dilution. We can talk about that in the live video that actually could be seen as a good thing. The other side could be, hey, why is he helping out Goldman Sachs with the problem that's going on here, giving them more shares? We'll see. But for the most part, we can see this is not what you want for AMC. Even though I think this has a good chance this week of seeing some kind of good price action, I think it has a good chance of failing it if it does see positivity. Obviously, I would be happy if this thing just runs. So I want to look at the implied volatility, and I'll probably hop on the live video to talk about this a little bit earlier. But we notice the signals here. The 30-minute is very deep into negative territory, so the likelihood of that continuing is very, very high with a lower high at this point. The 2-hour has crossed down, and this is where you can get bullish. If that 2-hour is able to turn up, that is still positive. So that would mean the 30-minute is going strongly positive. We're able to curl up a 2-hour, and maybe you're able to see something crazy. But this is where it's important. The reason that we show off these things, the reason that we have the weekly levels on Patreon for you, and you're looking at that options data, so you are aware of this. Not a lot of people were aware of this. Everyone got bullish right here. This is when I started to sell one of my positions just to make money in the play, right? Because I know, hey, I can keep 2 positions in this. I can sell one of them. If that sees a drop, I can buy again at lower prices. That's how I like to do it. Now, this does have a 2-hour divergence here, so you want to be paying attention to if that daily rolls. I want to be very clear here. If the daily rolls, that is not necessarily a bad thing just yet. It can turn into a bad thing, but if we can, I think, hold 437 again in some way and turn back up into positive territory, you don't have divergence or anything like that here. And you could see one more downturn during an important week for GME with earnings, and then you actually see that curl back up into positive territory. And if that daily curls up into positive territory, I'll be taking a good chance with AMC. GME, big thing, earnings, December 10th, right? Earnings coming up, and the daily is curled down. So already the daily is not necessarily the most with you at this point. It is saying more pullback to come. Do we have 2 hour signals that are giving us a hint that this thing is going to go super, super bullish? You have a hint of, okay, the 2 hours trying to go positive, so a positive move is definitely possible. But be open to if that 2 hour rolls down before earnings and creates some kind of divergence. Be open to the fact that they see this E2. The short sellers see this E2, so they know, and they've been preparing for this week. This is actually why I kind of like the fact that there was a pop last week. They had to use some liquidity there, and that's why you saw the flash crash with Bitcoin. Like, let's just be honest at this point, Bitcoin is being used. They use Bitcoin at times for liquidity to suppress GME and AMC. It just happens. That's just there. But the 30-minute here, the 30-minute doing something very interesting for me, at least in my view, on Friday. There were multiple times this could have crossed down. We look a little flaggy, so be open to if that 30-minute crosses down, you might be in a downtrend for a bit of time. That's where we'll look for the 2 hour divergence, but we'll just notice that it refused to cross down on Friday. So right now you do have the 30-minute positive, you have a 2 hour that is positive, and you have a daily that is not, right? It is not positive in positive territory. So this needs to curl up. We always say the 3 things you need in order for this to take off on any of these type of stocks is you need a daily positive, a 2 hour positive, and a 30-minute crossed up and positive to see a big move. And that goes for pretty much any stock, but it especially holds true for something like GME. And just note that we're going to update these levels for you tomorrow morning during the live show, so please show up. I haven't had time to do them this morning just yet. So GME, I do think we have possible a good chance for this to move higher. Whether that is going to move higher, be a trap, or whether that is going to move lower and then be a trap first, I think you will see a decent move out of GameStop if the signals can keep looking like this. Now we're going to talk about the dollar DXY, and we're going to talk about volatility, but I wanted to show you guys how we knew that the dollar had a high probability of bottoming here. We had triple divergence here for your MACD, for your RSI on a 4 hour chart at the same time right here in our buy zone. So 2 hour divergence here, 2 hour divergence here as well, and that really helped us out. And we were some of the only people really saying, hey, the dollar is going to boom here, and that ended up happening, right? We ended up curling up the daily, and we saw a big trend move. And now what are we seeing in the recent price action? Well, if we really pay attention to this, the 4 hour did not cross up yet. Okay, the 4 hour did not cross up yet. So maybe you need to do something you did right in here. And weirdly enough, something you actually did way back here at this level to go higher, and that is make a 2 hour divergence. 2 hour divergence really likes to show up and then curl up a 4 hour chart. And so you'll see the 4 hour isn't curled up, you see it curled up right here. So now look at the 2 hour. Look at the 2 hour divergence that formed first the last time we actually saw that 4 hour confirm. So if you want a great hint of, is the dollar about to explode? Well, then we could see maybe even a slight upward move for a couple hours, and then you see that turn back down, and we create that 2 hour signal down here at the low. Now, the only other side to that is if you're not going to make that divergence, just pay attention if the 4 hour is strongly confirming up into positive territory. I think you have to be very aware of if this is going to go into another daily move. And the reason for that, especially in December, is because you are on the edge of glory. You are on the edge of curling up a monthly chart. And this is where if you really need to go watch that Saturday video, because we just showed how the dollar bottoms before the market tops, and that can take place for a while. We've already seen it strongly for almost 3 months now, and this time it took about 6 months. Okay, this time it took about 6 months, but this move is stronger this time. So if you start seeing this break out, you start curling up on that monthly MACD, you might only have a couple months left. This is why we're paying attention to now. This is why we're paying attention to March of 2025, and this is why we will pay attention to if it wants to extend for a long period of time, even October of 2025. You are in one of those moments now. Pay attention if we see the weakness signals. Once again, we do not have those daily weakness signals yet, so do not get trapped in thinking, hey, this is a massive stock market crash, until we actually see weeklies curl down, until we actually see monthlies curl down, because you do not have those hints in the 2-hour or even daily scale when it comes to the SPY and the Qs. Now I'm going to pop over to volatility just to do this right away. First of all, when do we see massive volatility? Well, we actually see big moves in volatility. Usually that has to go positive, right? We'll notice on this bar right here, we actually were just getting into positive territory, and boom, we get into positive territory and we see big volatility come in. We curl up into positive territory, boom, big volatility comes in on the monthly scale. What's the thing here? We curled up, we saw big volatility, but we're not positive, so we're not able to hold it just yet. So pay attention, because this could be coming around the corner, but it can take a lot of time. So something I am still watching here is for us to see signals down towards the 12-12 level. Down towards the 12-12 level, we like to bottle up, really convince people to get greedy, and then we see that explosive move in volatility. That is something that I think can form relatively soon, in December going into January. So if we start seeing reactions from volatility and see that turn down to 12-12, we start making those divergence, be paying attention, because this can be a bigger drop than we've experienced in a while. So pay attention to it. As we go into a 2-hour chart, you're going to notice we do have a 2-hour divergence going into Monday. So if we're going to pull back like some signals are suggesting, and then we see that drop that maybe people don't expect, it really gets them fearful, and we're able to buy back up, that would be very interesting, because that, a scary move down and then a very bullish move up, meaning like the SPY does the opposite of what I'm drawing here, that can really cause people to get bullish. They can really start to think, oh, volatility is coming in. I'm right. This thing's going to crash. It saves itself. Volatility starts to go down here. Down towards 12-12 is where they start to think, oh, there's no way this market can fall. And that's where the rich start to sell their stocks at high levels to the retail traders. And that's where retail really can get trapped. So we will stay aware of these signals. Be very aware if the 2-hour is going to cross up early on in the week, because that can get ugly, but be open to this market heading higher, because you do not have daily weakness signals just yet. The main takeaway is kind of a mix of the macro and the micro, if you want to call it micro. I'd say more medium term, 30-minute, 2-hour scale. You do not necessarily have the weakness on the daily that says this is going to be the moment. You more so see a moment that's like, hey, top Bollinger, I'm out of gas. Let's get people to get fearful for even more so now, and then see that thing turn back up and make them get really, really bullish. And then that's where something bad can actually happen in December. So that's what I'd mainly be paying attention to, and a lot can happen in those shorter time frames. So make sure we are trading like water. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a fantastic Sunday ahead of you, watching some football, eating some good food, but make sure you're well rested, well reloaded for this week to come, and know that even though we have a smaller range, we should expect small moves. But lately, since we've gotten these really tiny ranges, we've been seeing some crazy stuff. So don't be taken off guard, because you know, hey, something crazy can happen if we start to break these levels. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. You guys are fantastic. I love this community. I love streaming with you guys every single morning. I think it's a ton of fun, and I look forward to doing that with you guys tomorrow morning. So peace out.